Well, for the last couple of years, the 208 has been covering the change in leadership and subsequent infighting within Idaho's majority party. Speaking of election implications, there have been stricter rules passed by the state GOP about who can register as a Republican, about whether elected Republicans are Republican enough, and the policies being pursued through the State House. This new direction of the party has prompted a lot of long-term Idaho Republicans to question how this happened and what could be done about it. We've gotten messages from viewers like Pat, who said she moved to Idaho because it is a red state. How do we remove GOP Chair Dorothy Moon and her unbalanced committee members out of office she holds and out of our state? Or Steve, who sent us a message about Chair Moon and this trend of censoring elected Republicans, calling it a joke. Steve asked, who elected you to your office, Dorothy? Well, Steve, in a way, as a registered Republican, you did. You may not know this, but your ballot, on your GOP closed primary ballot, there are a couple of names you either marked or maybe you didn't that had a direct correlation to the current direction of the state's majority party. When it's time to take a look at your primary ballot this May, squeezed in between selections for Supreme Court justices and county commissioners, you'll see a section for picking party officers, the precinct committee members. A political position you probably aren't too familiar with, usually being sought by a singular or sometimes a coupling of names that may be just as unfamiliar to you. Are they kind of like the invisible candidates?
To a lot of people, yeah. I mean, they're not usually actively going out and campaigning.
Amos Rothstein was once one of those invisible candidates.
I first got elected in 2012.
As a college student in Latah County. How old were you?
Oh, God. How old was I? 22.
22, okay.
Yeah.
But Amos was bitten by the politics bug back when he was just a boy.
That means automatic recount.
While watching the Bush-Gore election in 2000.
I thought this is kind of the perfect mix of news, importance, and entertainment. I didn't really know what it all meant when I was 8 years old, but I got involved shortly after in every cycle since 2002. When I was 10, I volunteered in my first campaign, involved every cycle since.
Helping a governor get elected is one way to get involved, but Amos also learned at a young age where his efforts might have more impact.
The local organizations really matter. Those are the ones who are putting together volunteers. Those are the ones who are doing the outreach to voters in their community.
That peer-to-peer, local-level politics, that's precinct committee members.
I just kind of got thrown in.
Ben Furman was asked to run for his seat in Bingham County at the last minute 2 years ago.
I got a phone call from Dan Craven and said, hey, we need someone to run for precinct committee member. Will you do it? I was like, what's that? He goes, well, it's no big deal. Just fill out this paperwork. It'll be easy.
Ben did it all in about 2.5 hours.
And turned it in. I was like, sweet. I guess now I'm running for a position.
A position, Ben realized.
And then people go to the ballots and they say, oh, well, I don't know him, but I do know him. Check.
That maybe didn't get a lot of attention at the polls.
I think there's about 1,100 voters, registered voters in my precinct. I won my election 2 years ago by 70% of the vote and got just under 200 people.
But it's a role that would reverberate through the Republican Party.
My experience, my knowledge of is usually precinct committee members are an afterthought. Nobody really knows what we are, what we do.
So being the afterthought, there's a lot that falls to that position.
Yeah, there is, but people don't realize that. I mean, let's talk about what a precinct committee member is, right? They're supposed to be the liaison between the party and the grassroots. So they're the person, the conduit that gets information up and says, hey, my community feels this way, and brings information back down and says, hey, the party thinks this. Then they're supposed to get out the vote. So during election time, as Republicans, we're supposed to support Republican candidates, and precinct committee members rally the troops. Then they vote at the county level. So when you have a sheriff or a commissioner who resigns or the office becomes vacant, it's the precinct committee members of that party that get together and vet and nominate somebody to take their place. And then they vote at the state level.
The state level responsibility is where the power of precinct committee members comes into play. They kind of control, eventually, the direction of politics in Idaho.
Yeah.
That direction is dictated almost immediately after they are elected in the May primary. Within 10 days, precinct committee members meet and they elect their leadership. That leadership then selects delegates to the state convention. At the convention, those delegates decide on the party platform, the party rules, and the party leadership. Like the election of Dorothy Moon as GOP chair in the summer of 2022.
But the nominees can be anybody. Well, Northern Idaho, Kootenai County nominated David Riley to be a delegate at the convention. He's not a precinct committee member. He is what he is, and he went as a delegate.
What Dave Riley is an anti-Semite who participated in the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017, who then moved to North Idaho. And just months before the 2022 GOP state convention, Riley ran as a Democratic candidate for governor. At the convention, Riley was behind a political prank involving pizza and a local homeless shelter.
It's the person standing behind him in the plaid shirt.
And the shelter pointed to David Riley.
Yes.
So when you stack the deck, because most people don't understand or haven't in the past understood how all this process worked, you get people that go to the convention who don't necessarily represent the traditional Idaho values that those precincts are supposed to represent.
The deck started getting stacked long ago, according to Amos.
You know, it's sort of a long water filter process that, you know, before you see it in your cup, there's a lot of processes it goes through. But yeah, you're right.
But you get enough of them.
You get enough of them.
There's enough of that carbon and charcoal in there.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's overflowing, and you don't see the tide coming.
But Ben says the tide really started to rise more quickly more recently.
At some point, somewhere, you have people who feel like they don't have power, they don't have a voice. And I think over the years, those people realize that we don't have any power as libertarians, but if we become Republicans, then nobody will know the difference, and then we can get in and we can start pushing our agendas.
And a true, actual right-wing takeover is happening right now in the state of Idaho, and there's nothing that these people can do about it.
A tactic amplified by the likes of white supremacist and another North Idaho resident, Vincent James Fox.
Here's the solution, right? The solution is local politics, amassing power in these pockets of the country until it's time to unify. Amassing power. Just get involved. Go to your local GOP meetings. Push these people further right. Push them. And if they don't push, if they don't budge, then replace them. Period. Point blank.
Perhaps that's why this election cycle is seeing a few more, quote, mainstream Republicans step into races that used to be relatively unknown.
Because who is in control of the Central Committee has become so important.
I believe across the state, I think there's something like 950 precinct committee members total, and we have over 500 of them that are contested because we've woken up. We said, wait a minute, that guy is not representing my community the way that I would represent my community. I think it's time for a change. You're not running on, social or fiscal issues like the people in the building behind us are when they run for office. You're running on talking about essentially the conscience and the direction of the party, and whether or not your neighbors agree with your vision of it or not. Starts at the precinct level.
The precinct committeeman election.
Correct. Right now, I don't think there'll ever be a time in Idaho's history where the precinct committee members and the precinct races are more important to our future.
Both Amos and Ben believe this recent growing trend of censuring elected lawmakers by central committees is not the party they joined all those years ago. That would be the party of Reagan, they both said. A party with a big tent where they agree on the core principles like fiscal responsibility, small localized government, but where there's plenty of room under the big tent to disagree on the fringe issues. Speaking of a big tent, there are 145 precincts in Ada County alone, which is Idaho's most populated county. You compare that to Clark County, Idaho's least populated, there are only 3. By the way, we did reach out to the state party for their comment on precinct committee member elections. Our request, once again, went unanswered.